You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. Today on the show, we're talking about writing books, children's books, specifically with my new friend, Allan Jackson. Ty is an award-winning children's book author, youth motivational speaker, literacy advocate, and honorary doctorate recipient. A 3-time TEDx presenter, he travels around the U.S. inspiring children to read and educating adults about the impacts of illiteracy. But before we jump into this conversation with Ty, if you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur using multiple softwares for marketing, email, forms, calendars, SMS, reputation management, et cetera, then you're doing it wrong. You owe it to yourself to go check out High Level's all-in-one platform for marketing and automation, so you can get back to focusing on the things in your business that you actually are really good at. They have built an incredible tool over there that is somehow as simple as it is capable. So join over 3 million other businesses and go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis for a free 30-day trial to see what High Level can do for you. Now, without further ado, Allan Jackson, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. Happy to be here. Excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, listen, dude, you got a really unique, interesting story. So without me muddying the waters, let's hear it from your mouth here. Talk to me about the first book that you ever wrote and when you realized that there was some real meat on the bone here.
Yeah, well, to start that conversation, it's good to preface that I was originally born and raised in the Bronx. And there's a reason why I mentioned that. And my mother was an avid reader. Despite us being very poor, there was no real forms of entertainment other than going to the library, as my mother said, because we could get books for free 99. And so she would read to us religiously, and that was one of my big introductions to the world of literature. And but always as a reader, never as a writer, until my son, who was about 8 years old at the time, asked me a question that would change my life. And he simply said, "Dad, can we open up a lemonade stand?" But like I said, I'm from the Bronx. You don't do lemonade stands in the Bronx. It just kind of doesn't work that way. But we at the time lived in Western Massachusetts, and all kids did lemonade stands. So we got a cardboard box picture of lemonade, little umbrellas, and he made $50 in 3 hours selling lemonade, which kind of blew my mind because I'm thinking, we'll make $5-6, go get some ice cream and call it a day. With the $50, he was like, "Dad, what do I do with this money?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So I went to my local bookstore to try to find a book to teach my son about what to do with this $50. And I noticed two things. One, there were so few books teaching kids about money, and there were so few books with a young Black protagonist that looked like my son, that was cool, fun, and contemporary, and wasn't about Underground Railroads or segregation and stuff like that, or overcoming obstacles. Just fun books. The name Danny Dollar popped into my head, went home, started writing. It took me a year to write the book. And then after submitting my manuscript to 147 agents and being rejected 147 times, I've learned how to publish it myself. To date, I've sold over 250,000 copies of that book, and now as a self-published author, wow, and over 350,000 copies of all of my books overall.
Wow, that's an insane story. What were you doing before that point? Before the lemonade?
I was in corporate sales for Allied Waste, which at the time was the second largest trash hauler in the country. So technically, I sold glorified garbage cans, but it was a good gig. I really enjoyed it. It was great work, and it's probably something. It was a job that I could do, quote unquote job I could have done for most of my career. But when I got the idea to write children's books, I really didn't have a focus or a passion or a purpose, and Mark Twain once said the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And the day that I held my children's book in my hand for the first time, I knew why I was here. Mm-hmm. And so part of what I do is not only travel across the country inspiring kids to read, but also allowing kids to use books as a vessel to discover their own passion and their own purpose.
Why do you think your mom was such an avid reader? The free 99 thing, great. I love that. It's the best price you can hear is free 99.
That's right.
But also there are countless number of people that grew up in poor communities that had access to public libraries that didn't end up reading, obviously. So why do you think she was such an avid reader?
Yeah, and mind you, my mother had me at 15 years old. So, we're not talking a worldly woman. So it makes it even more fascinating that books were so prominent within our home from such a young mother who was so wise beyond her age. It's a good question. One question, honestly, I need to ask her. I don't think I ever asked like why books were such a prominent part of her life, so much so that she instilled them all within our home.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess one thing, and I'm assuming you being a reader too. One book, it's always been one book that kind of changes your life. It always has one book that kind of shifts the narrative on how you look at the world. And
Mm.
I can only assume that my mother found that one book at an early age and knew that that was kind of the key and the catalyst
Yeah.
to being and fostering a greater life and lifestyle. So, but I'm going to ask her based on your question, like
Yeah.
what was the guiding star to her becoming such an avid reader at such a young
I
age?
mean, huge props to mom, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's tough. I don't even know if it'd be tougher or easier. I don't know. But I'm a young father myself, and I am always trying to look out selfishly for parenting advice because, man, like you don't know how much you don't know until you have a kid and you have to try to like explain to them how the world works. And you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know anything. You know what I
Right.
mean? Stop listening to
That's
me.
right.
You know what I mean? But they think you know everything.
Right.
And so, one of those things that I try to do more is like when I read, I try to make sure that my kids are around to see that I'm reading, so that it kind of prompts their curiosity to go pick up a book themselves. What are some ways that you help encourage young people to pick up more books rather than getting sucked into the vortex of social media or Netflix or
Yeah.
video games or some of these other things?
Well, one of the things, just adding to what you said about Netflix and video games, is that I think it's important to be an and parent and not an or parent.
Mm.
I think it's essential to kids because kids are going to want to watch Netflix. They're going to want to play video games. They're going to want to hang out with their friends, and we should
Yeah.
encourage that. So books are part of the equation. They're not separate from the equation. So make sure that and do it in a way or encourage it in a way so that it's not like go to your room and read a book, like making
Yeah.
it a punishment. And it's like and tethering reading to being something negative is one surefire way to get your kids to not want to read. So, yes, you get to play 45 minutes of video games, watch an hour of Netflix, read for 15 minutes. Just keep that as part of the narrative. And you alluded also to another essential and maybe the most important part of getting kids to read. And I paraphrase James Baldwin, who once said that children they children rarely listen to their adult parent. Children rarely listen to their parents, but they never fail to emulate them.
Mm.
So if you want your child to be a reader, they need to see you reading around them, reading to them, reading with them, and finding fun and creative ways to interject reading into your book. A lot of one of the things I saw somebody do that was really creative is that they created meals around like green eggs and ham, getting some color and dye and actually making green eggs and ham,
Mm.
or the very hungry caterpillar and creating, getting fruits and vegetables and making little caterpillars out of the fruits and vegetables. So finding creative ways to interject cloudy with a chance of meatballs. What do you think you're going to have for dinner that night? Spaghetti and meatballs. So finding fun, silly, whimsical, creative ways to interject reading just into family culture is paramount.
Do you have any, I don't know, I guess, rules or guidelines that you try to operate by in order, like on a daily basis, things that you can kind of like put into your daily life that help encourage that a little bit more?
Well, one of the most simplest things is parents come to me all the time and says my kid hates to read, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And after I ask them how often do you read, and some of them will say not very often, strike one. I ask the next, when was the last time you took your child to a bookstore?
Mm.
And the percentage of parents that have never taken their child to a bookstore blows my mind,
Mm.
because there is something so magical and powerful about just walking into the bookstore, from the literally tens of thousands of books on the shelves to just the smell and the atmosphere and just the culture of books is really magical, and something that if a child has never been privy to, I think really opens up their eyes. But at that point, once you walk through the door, take $20 or $10, whatever you got, put it in their hand and let them go. I think what's really important is that letting the child to decide what book is for them, not you. You don't get to decide.
Mm.
This is their opportunity to own something, to foster this new love of reading. So if your little boy wants to read about ballerinas, let him read it. If your little girl wants to read about trucks, let her read it. And then when she gets to the counter, let her pay. Make sure that $20 that she has, let that interaction
Yeah.
of purchasing something for themselves kind of really be prominent in this whole discovering the world of books component. And I guarantee you, when you sit them in the back seat with their little car seat, 100 out of 100 times they're going to crack open that book, because they got to choose it, they got to pay for it, they got to own it. And that sense of ownership is really important, not just for that moment, but also the opportunity to build their own library, which is really, really important in fostering the love of books, is having books that you chose around you all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was one of those kids. Again, these are selfish questions that I'm asking.
No, that's
Because,
what's up.
yeah, I was one of those kids, man. I hated reading. My sister got all the reading genes. I was the sports guy. I was the guy playing basketball in the driveway by myself for hours and hours every day. But she would be inside at the same time reading through a 700-page novel or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just kind of grew up with that being the belief system and that being the identity of, like, you're the reader, I'm the sports guy, and like that's what we do. I didn't start reading until basically I kind of hit a rock bottom, not really rock bottom moment, but a back against the wall moment in my early 20s, where I just realized I didn't know what I was doing with my life and started, just getting really, really hungry for outside information that I hadn't learned. Started kind of the personal journey of continued education beyond formal education. And now it's more like a 20 to 25 books a year type of thing for me, just without really thinking about it. But I don't see that that's a typical path and I have to think that it has something to do with your, like what you just said, owning the material that you're putting in front of yourself, or allowing your kids to own the material that they put in front of themselves. Obviously, with some degree of filtration, you can't just let them pick up
100%
some sort of damaging book. But yeah,
right,
but
of course.
Yeah, assuming that we're on the same page there, allowing them to pick up what's interesting to them, that they would actually have an interest in cracking open and reading through. I'm curious to hear what you think. So I've been thinking about implementing this, and I have not done it yet because I don't know if it will foster a hatred for reading, kind of what we're talking about earlier. I've been thinking about putting in a rule, and especially now that my son's coming out of kindergarten, and he's graduating kindergarten in a couple of weeks here. Summer's around the corner. And I was just thinking, like, how can we make sure that he still has some sort of like thirst for education in the summer, where I am not requiring it or making it like this really annoying thing. And my thought was, like, before you pick up your Nintendo Switch that we just got him for Christmas this past year, before you start, watching a TV show, before the TV comes on, basically reading, like, you have to read first. Like there's like, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 3 pages, just getting into the habit of, like, we do not consume information or play video games or do anything on TV. We do not do this particular thing before we crack open a book and start reading first. Do you think that type of a rule would foster a thirst for learning and reading, or do you think that it would potentially be one of those things where they're like, oh, I guess I gotta read before I turn on the TV or whatever?
I'm such a firm believer that, like we mentioned earlier, there's always one book that kind of changes the way that you look at reading and, in essence, the world. And sometimes it's a numbers game. Sometimes it takes 10 books to get to that place. Sometimes it takes 2. Sometimes it takes 50. But once you get to that place, I think that it changes everything and you look at reading differently. So I think every tool in the toolbox really matters. I kind of like this kind of eat the frog kind of component. I don't know if you're familiar with the eat the frog.
Yep.
Like, get it out of the way. Like,
Yep.
And that's what I do. I actually do 15 minutes of reading first thing in the morning, because if I wait till the end of the night after sports, I'm super tired,
Zapped.
blah, blah, blah. I'm zapped. And the last thing, honestly, reading is just going to make me fall asleep faster. So I eat the frog. I do it the second I work out, I meditate, I read. Out of the way. Now, if I get the chance to read again throughout the day, bonus, like, awesome. So I think your idea of eating the frog first and getting book, and I don't want to equate reading to kind of doing the thing you don't want to do first, but I think that there's a way to kind of, like, put vegetables in the mashed potatoes with it, and maybe it's a carrot, maybe it's a reward for, put it in your 15 minutes of reading time. I think once it becomes habitual, then they're just kind of on autopilot with it. And then I think once they get the right book or the right storyline, that they look forward to it, and don't mistake that comic books can't be that vessel. Magazines can't be that vessel. Like whatever it is, like, hey, your kid loves LeBron James, get a LeBron James book. She loves Beyonce, get a Beyonce, or Taylor Swift, get a Taylor Swift Beyonce book. Because I think that's one of the other important components to reading, that there is no other platform within the pages of a book where you can engage and have a one-on-one conversation with the greatest minds who've ever lived. Like,
yeah.
like there's no interview, there's no podcast, there's no biopic that's going to give you the one-on-one conversation from a Steve Jobs, from a Martin Luther King, from a Rosa. There's no other vessel than reading that will build this one-on-one conversation that you will have. And I think that's a huge thing that people miss, that they literally can have a one-on-one conversation with the greatest minds who've ever lived within the pages of a book.
Yeah, it seems like the thirst for knowledge or information is one of the best things that you as a parent can pass on to your kids.
Yeah.
Because then they're equipped with the tools to navigate the difficulties of life, because somebody else out there at some point in history has already done that thing. You know what I mean?
You got it.
So, that was kind of like where it came from for me, was just like, you're not going to learn everything from me. Sooner or later, you're going to be 18 and you're going to be out the door, and I'm not going to have much to do with and hopefully at that point, I've done a good enough job where you can feel comfortable to come to me and ask me questions, and I can continue to help guide you. But also, there's so many things that I don't know. and so, like, unless they choose a path that is eerily similar to the path that I chose, then I'll be out of my depth in a lot of senses, and they have to be able to learn that thing without having to come just exclusively to me, and me being like the ultimate arbiter of truth in their life. It's like, well, you have to figure that out for yourself.
Right.
And this thirst for learning, thirst for knowledge, obviously was something that had a massive impact on you. I mean, even before you started down the path that you're on right now, which is an amazing, cool path and journey that you're doing right now with just like self-publishing children's books, selling hundreds of thousands of copies. Like, for anybody listening, most books never sell over 1,000 copies.
It's
maybe
very
not
true.
even 100 copies,
published or unpublished.
Right, right. Publishing houses, if you can sell 10,000 copies of a book, like a publishing house will want to sign you for another book. Like
you're killing
selling a 250,000 copies of something is an insane thing that you did. So congratulations on all the success. My point is to say, like, even before that, you were doing corporate sales and providing an amazing a life for your family, for a kid from the Bronx that grew up in poverty, even a single teenage mother. That is a success story by itself. And clearly, like, the thirst for knowledge that you had at such a young age that you saw in your mom had a massive impact on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, despite having 2 kids by the time she was 18 years old, she went on to get her master's degree, and wow. And she was just she, to this day, she's my hero. I don't even know how back in the 70s and 80s, that with the 2 kids in tow, figuring out how to work several jobs, getting your master's degree, and just being such a pillar in the community, and raising 2 kids, by the way, it's a testament to the resolve of who we are as such, and who she is as such as an amazing human being, and a role model for me to be able to accomplish the things that I have, and to do it in a way that breeds joy and happiness, because I love this, man. Like, I can't put into words like what this means to me, and to discover. I mean, I didn't get the idea to write this until I was 40. That's when I got the idea. My first book didn't come out till I was 43, till 42, 43. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, from the role modelship that I had specifically from my mom, but also being raised in the Bronx, because one of the things that I attribute my success to is that I literally got to witness the conception, the birth, the growth, and development of hip hop music. I saw it born in front of me. And so to see young kids who at one point were powerless, who were voiceless, to create their own genre, and that genre to become this megaphone for their lives, for their joys, for their hates, for their passions, and then for it to literally circle the world in such a short period of time, where kids in Japan are doing breakdancing and kids in Australia are doing hip hop and DJing. It is definitely one of the catalysts behind me feeling like I can accomplish anything.
Yeah, no kidding. My son wants to be a DJ.
Yeah, that's what's up. How old
for the last 2 years? That's every time we ask him the questions, and when his teachers ask him the question, he wants to be a DJ, and it's stuck. Like, the first time I heard him say it, I was like, how did you even? Where did you even hear? Where did you
That's
think
great.
Like that was like a plausible path that you could take, but now it's like you said, kids just grow up with it. It's not even a question of of, if they'll ever be touched by this music in some way. It's a question of when. But yeah,
Yeah,
he's six, and all
love it.
he's
Oh man,
kept that since he was literally 4 years old. I was like,
I love it.
first time I said it, I was like, what? All right, you do you, buddy. Like, he talks about
Yeah.
the other day, he sat in the back of the car. We have a video of it somewhere. It was almost 10 minutes where he was just telling us all about what he calls it his DJ store, what his DJ store is going to look like one day, and all the things he's going to have there, and when they're going to close and open. And I was just like, buddy, what? I was like, why do you want to be a DJ? And he goes, he was like, I just want to make people dance and be happy. And I was like,
Wow.
all right, I can't argue with that. That's some solid
Beautiful.
reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
like you said, like it's cool to see that, that's been such a worldwide, global, cross-cultural thing that has touched the lives of so many people, and started out of nothing, out of struggle, out of
Literally.
poverty,
Yeah,
out of, what
that's
I mean?
right.
Like, it's been super cool to see that. I'm sure for somebody like you to grow up, how you grew up, and then to see the inception and then the proliferation of something like that is probably really inspiring.
Yeah, truly. And to be able to pass that on to kids, to be able to say, you know, there's no dream too big. There's no thing to that, that literally the mantra of nothing isn't possible is so prominent. And I tell kids, if you take that word impossible and separate it, it says I'm possible.
Yeah.
And so and just to give kids the tools to be able to be the best versions of themselves, like your 6-year-old DJ and son. I just that tickles my heart to hear that, because I can see him now, like getting ready, and like we've seen these things on like America's Got Talent where 6-year-olds are banging the drums better than
Right.
John Bottom from Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
so it's not out of bounds for this 6-year-old DJ to become world renowned in 8 years, with
Yeah.
the right tutelage and mindset. So love it.
For writing books specifically, Ty, most, like I said, most authors never sell more than, few dozen copies, maybe if they're lucky 100, if they're really lucky 1,000. What did you do to get a self-published book for kids to go from 0 to 250,000 copies sold?
Great question. So, like every first time author, especially every indie first time author, I thought the primary way for me to sell books was to go to bookstores. They would happily take my books, put them on the shelves, and they would sell out. Like, and everybody would, think that I was the next Dr. Seuss or Shel Silverstein. Well, that didn't happen, and it didn't happen pretty quickly. Every bookstore I went to, just they didn't care. It didn't matter. And within a couple of months, I'm like this is tough. Like how am I? I've got 1,000 books in my garage. How am I going to sell these books? And then I asked myself a really simple question. Well, ultimately, who do I want these books into the hands of? Do I want them into the hands of bookstore managers or retail managers? No, ultimately, I want them into the hands of children. Where are children? Children are in schools, they're in daycare centers, they're in youth organizations, boys and girls clubs, YMCA's, United Ways. So I went and knocked on every single institution in my community that either had something to do with children or financial literacy. And I sold 1,000 copies in a month, just like that.
Wow.
Just literally knocking on doors. The second month, I reached out to Carver Bank in New York City. At the time, they were the largest Black-owned bank in the country. I sent a copy of my book along with a letter to the CEO of the company, saying I think that this would be an amazing tool for you to teach the children of Harlem about finance and entrepreneurship. 2 weeks later, the CEO called me personally and said, "I love this book. Would you come to Harlem, talk to the children of our community about financial literacy? And by the way, can we order 1,000 copies?"
Nice, man. That's awesome.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
And I quit my job that day. I like this is
Wow.
this is what I'm supposed to do. And so the majority of my books are not sold in stores. I probably have my books in a dozen stores across the country. I reach out to youth organizations and schools, and they will buy 2,000 copies, 5,000 copies. City of Jacksonville, Florida, a couple of years ago, bought 10,000 copies. I actually have an organization in Maryland that wants to buy 14,000 copies. So, like, I foster these relationships. I build this reputation. I always make sure that I find what is important to these organizations and figure out how to tether my work to their mission. And
Mm.
that's one of the secret sauces to be able to get these institutions to realize that this book is a tool for them to foster their ideas to their community, not mine. And that's how I've been doing it.
Who do you want to read this book, and how do you get in touch with those people? I mean, it's so funny, man, because sometimes we overcomplicate things, and
Amen.
it's so simple. It's just not easy to do the work of like figuring out,
That's right.
who is the CEO of that bank, and how do I get what's their address, and who do I address it to, and there's a lot of other work that's involved to get to this level of success that you've gotten to. But man, I appreciate the work that you're doing in the world, man, and going to pick up a copy of your book for my kids as well, to teach them more about financial literacy in a way that would be fun for them. So Ty, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing a little bit more about your story. Maybe we can do a part two in person at some point later on down the road. Where can people go to find more from you, get more from you?
I'm not hard to find. I'm on every social media platform there is. But if you go to tyallanjackson.com, you can see my work, my advocacy, my mission. And thank you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. This was a really, really fun podcast. You do a great job. And yeah, I appreciate you and thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Of course, tyallanjackson.com. That's ALLAN, tyallanjackson.com. Go check out everything that Ty's working on. If you got kids, pick up a copy of his books. I mean, kids need financial literacy, and it seems like the schools aren't going to be teaching it to them. So that's going to be left up to us as parents and authors like Ty. Go pick up some of his books. I know you will not regret that. Ty, thanks again for doing this. Everybody else listening, remember, money only solves your money problems, but it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.